At 11:30 past midnight, I was home alone and ordered a takeout. The rider called me when the map showed the rider was 0 meters away. But when I got through, not a word was said on the other end of the line, and it was eerily quiet. I hung up impatiently, but the rider wrote me privately at that moment. "Sorry, I am deaf. I called you so that I can notify you to pick up your food at the first time. I can't explain the situation to you on the phone. I am really sorry. You're in a hurry to wait. I've put the takeout at the door for you. Please pick it up as soon as possible." I was just about to go to the door when a couple lines of pop-ups suddenly floated in front of me. "Don't open the door. That's not a delivery boy. He's a murderer. He called you in order to confirm whether you are a woman living alone by the voice on the phone." I'm really convinced that the protagonist of every thriller text is so brainless, and this delivery guy obviously has a problem with answering the door. I was startled by the sudden pop-up, and my hand, which was trying to get to the door, shook violently and instantly retracted. What is this? What murderer? What thriller protagonist? Is this about me? Although I've never been a big believer in all this weird theology, the words were literally floating in front of me. My heart skipped a beat, and I couldn't think of anything else but to catch the key message in the pop-up. Right now, outside my door stands a murderer who could kill me at any time. I pressed myself alertly against the door, holding my breath as I peered out through the cat's eye. But the hallway outside was empty, not a soul in sight. My gaze was fixed on the hallway beyond the cat's eye. It quickly became apparent that something was wrong. Our neighborhood buildings are equipped with automatic sensor lights, and the lights stay on as long as there is someone in the building. And you can just about see the entire building from my front door. At the moment, there was clearly no one in the building, but the sensor light was on for a long time. This means that there is someone hiding in the hallway who just happens to be in the blind spot of my vision. I suddenly thought of something and immediately turned off the lights in the house, while looking down at the bottom of the front door at the crack. When the lights inside the house go out, the light that would have been outside the door will immediately shine through the doorway into the home. But at this moment, the doorway right in the middle of the gate was solidly blocked by a mass of dark shadows, with only a few faint glimmers of light coming in through the sides. There really is a man hiding outside. He was cowering at the moment, crouching in the doorway of my room. Only this position is in the dead center of the cat's eye view. Just then, my cell phone suddenly lit up with another message from the delivery rider. "Why haven't you picked up your food yet? Is there something wrong? I can help you." Through the crack in the door, looking at the writhing mass of dark shadows, I seemed to hear the breathing of the man outside. At this moment, I was even more convinced of the authenticity of those pop-ups just now. Convinced that there was indeed a plotter hiding in the doorway of my room. I decisively backed away from the doorway and quickly returned to the house, locking all the doors and windows. And then, he took out his cell phone and was ready to call the police. At the same time, another swath of pop-ups floated past my eyes. What? Is the heroine starting to grow a brain? She didn't even open the door? And you know to turn off the light in the room to see the shadow of the murderer outside the door. So smart. But the heroine, as the first victim to be killed, if she doesn't open the door at this point, then the plot can't continue later. Yeah, after the female lead was killed, the male lead was heartbroken, and that's why the plot of the male lead thrillingly solving the case afterward. After seeing these floating words, my heart trembled violently and I suddenly had a bad feeling. As luck would have it, a sneer came from the front door before I could dial the alarm on my cell phone. It was the voice of a strange man. And then there were a couple of soft scuffling noises, like someone was moving their body slightly. I clenched my fists nervously, and before I had time to react, the next second, a huge motorized lumber saw instantly penetrated the door of the room. The motorized lumber saw easily penetrated the door of the room, its teeth spinning wildly with a gut-wrenching sound. The man's figure became clearer, how I couldn't see him with his black mask and hat, but I could feel him staring me dead in the face. I stepped back in horror, only to realize that I couldn't back away from him. He didn't say a word, just looked straight at me, and then with a sharp jerk, the door to the room was sawed completely open. I threw my hands up in desperation, trying to make a last stand. Do I have a grudge against you? At least let me die with a clear conscience. But the man remained silent as he slowly raised the lumber saw, its teeth glinting coldly in the light. He swung hard. I only felt a sharp pain, and my eyes were instantly colored red with blood. My body was sawed in half, and the pain overwhelmed me like a tidal wave. Before I lost consciousness completely, I saw the string of pop-ups floating out again. I told you, this heroine has to die even if she doesn't open the door. The plot is already set. She is the first victim to die. She can't escape. Ugh, so sad. She's already smart, but it's still hard to escape death. Okay, don't cry on the screen upstairs. The suffocating part is over. Next you can read the cool article about the male lead solving cases and taking revenge. When he opened his eyes again, the smell of blood around him and the sharp pain in his body had disappeared. I found myself actually standing in front of my house again in one piece, my hand about to reach for the doorknob to open the door. The line of pop-ups in front of him popped back up. Don't open the door! That's not a delivery boy. He's a murderer. He called you in order to confirm whether you are a woman living alone by the voice on the phone. I'm really convinced that the protagonist of every thriller text is so brainless, and this delivery guy obviously has a problem with answering the door. I quickly retracted my hand that was about to open the door and covered my chest with a loud gasp. Am I being reborn? The man who had split me in half in my last life was now crouching in my doorway, leering. There's no time. He had a chainsaw in his hand, and as soon as he broke down the door, then there was no time or chance at all that I would be able to escape. I made a fiery run for the house, scanning a few doors before making a decisive dash for the bathroom. The bathroom is the closest room to the building window. Only by climbing out the bathroom window did I have any hope of escaping. I ran inside and reinforced the bathroom door by unlocking it while quickly running through my thoughts. From the strange pop-ups that popped up, I quickly rationalized that the world I was living in was the world in a horror thriller. And this thriller is a story that centers around this murderer outside the house and a highly intelligent teenager. The pop-up said that the story started with my death because I was someone very important to the hero, who was devastated by my death. And that's how he got involved in the mess and fought the murderer. But I don't even have a boyfriend, so who is this so-called male lead? I opened the bathroom window and looked down at the height of the 10-story building below me, and a wave of vertigo went through my head. The cell phone also sent a message from the deliveryman at that moment. Why haven't you picked up your food yet? Is there something wrong with it? I can help you. It's exactly the same as the last one. I know. The murderer will be in soon. Without further hesitation, I lifted my foot and climbed out the window. The pop-ups in front of me started rolling again. This heroine is bullish, although not much time to appear, but also fierce. Directly climb the window. Unfortunately, what's the point? This heroine must have died in the first episode, or else the plot can't continue later. But this heroine is really not bad. Beautiful, but also courageous and resourceful, worthy of being the hero's favorite woman. It's just a pity that the red face has a thin life. Yeah, there's no use for her even if she escapes the room. The downstairs entry and exit doors have been locked by the murderer. What does that mean? What do you mean I'm definitely going to die in the first episode? Am I not going to escape today no matter what? And who is the male lead? There are so many people talking about the male lead in the pop-ups. How come I don't see anyone mentioning the name? I climbed up the side of the hydrant with my hands and feet, and the moment I reached the window of the stairway, bang! There was a loud thud from next door as a chainsaw sawed through the gate. The murderer has entered my house. Not daring to linger for a moment, I quickly rolled into the window of the building. After scanning the elevator and stairs for a few moments, I fire into the elevator and press the first floor, before running out of the elevator and opting to sprint towards the bottom of the stairs. The elevators was fast, but the doors on the first floor were locked, so fast didn't help. But the building is dim and cluttered, making it a good place to hide. and pressing all the floors of the elevator to full capacity was just enough to wait for the elevator to go down and create the illusion for the murderer that I was in the elevator. I thought about my response as I ran. What if this world was written around a battle of wits between a murderer and a highly intelligent male lead, and the ultimate winner was the male lead? Then it means that the hero's ability and intelligence is above the murderer, so he is destined to fight the murderer. But the murderer, as the #1 villain of this world, his ability is set to be second only to the male protagonist. And me, a fake female protagonist used to pad the plot. Even if I do more, it's basically impossible for me to resist the power of the plot and the persona, and escape under him. So in the last life, even if I hadn't opened the door again, it would still have ended the same way. Then it's the same in this life. No matter where I can hide, that murderer is bound to find me again. The only thing I can do is stall and find the male lead and get him in early. Using the male character's strength to pull against him is the only way I'll have a shot. But who is this male lead? Really, I made it to the next floor and was about to run on down when I heard the ding of the elevator doors closing upstairs. The murderer was hit. He thought I'd gotten into the elevator and run to the first floor and had taken another set of elevators down to chase me. But I knew it wouldn't drag on much longer, and he'd soon realize he was screwed. I looked for a hiding spot as I ran down the stairs and ended up hiding in a pile of clutter in the 7th floor stairwell. This clutter pile was full of filth, left behind by the cleaning ants, and there was a sticky, fishy liquid everywhere. But that's exactly what turned this into one of the best hiding spots right now. It wasn't long before there was a rush and heavy footsteps in the hallway. It's the murderer coming after us! The footsteps were getting closer, and I held my breath, not daring to breathe. Mamma mia. It's so tense to watch. The heroine is about to be found out. So pathetic. If only the male lead were here now, he would be able to protect the female lead. Ugh, I don't dare to read it, it's too brutal. I'll just wait until the cool part of the story starts, when the male lead appears later on. The male lead is still sleeping at home, although he lives in the same building as the female lead. But the female lead and he are not familiar at all now. How can she go and ask for help with him? Alas, if only the heroine had sent a Weibo message to the hero, the love brain, had set a special beep for her. Surely he could have saved her. I caught the key message in the pop-up. The hero lives in the same building as me? And my WeChat friend? At the same time, footsteps stopped in front of me. I hid in the clutter and watched the mass of figures outside through the gap, my heart trembling. Luckily, he only stopped for a moment and quickly proceeded to run downstairs. Geez, this heroine is smart too, hiding in the middle of a mess of such disgusting filth that the murderer surely wouldn't have thought a scented and clean girl would be hiding in here. Ooh, getting tired of letting the heroine die. I didn't have time to care what the pop-ups were saying anymore, and I opened my phone at a rapid pace to check the WeChat list of people who fit the characteristics of the male lead. The number of people on my WeChat list was small, and it only took a moment of sifting to identify the only 2 people who fit the male lead's profile. One is my classmate, Zhang Xian, and the other is the grandson of the cleaner in the neighborhood, Wang Zhanghe. I froze, I didn't know either of them well. I quickly edited the distress message and group sent it to these 2. According to the pop-ups, the male lead has set a special tone for me, so the one who replies to messages the fastest is the male lead. Soon, the phone vibrated. It was from Zhengxian. You hide in place. Don't move now. I'll come to you right away. But the next second, Wang Zhanghe also sent a message. Get out of this position you're staying in now. That person is a highly intelligent player. It's no longer safe for you there. Run. They messaged me back almost simultaneously. But the messages from the 2 men gave me a completely different direction. Which one is the hero? I looked up to see the pop-up queue, but at the moment my eyes were blank and nothing was there. Just as I was hesitating, there was another rush of footsteps in the hallway. Is Zhang Xian here to see me? No, that's not right. Zhang Xian lives on the top floor of this building, and the footsteps were clearly coming from downstairs. It's the murderer. He's back. The footsteps were getting closer, and my heart was beating wildly in my chest. I'm not familiar with either Zhang Xian or Wang Zhanghe, and there's no way to tell which one is actually the highly intelligent male lead. Just then, the pop-ups rolled again. Wow! The heroine is asking the hero for help. How did she ask for help from two other people at the same time? And who was the other one? The heroine is saved. Our big hero is coming soon. Is it time to see the handsome face of the male lead in advance? The man is handsome and the woman is beautiful? I'm stoned. I caught the key message again. Cool? I recalled it carefully. Zhang Xian, that face, indeed born very delicate. I remember freshman year into the school he was also evaluated as the school grass. And Wang Zhanghe, I haven't seen him at all since he grew up, but his grandfather, Master Wang the cleaner, that looks, I guess Wang Zhanghe is no better. Then the male lead must be Zhang Xian. I chose to believe Zhang Xian and decisively hid in place. My whole heart clenched together when the footsteps in the hallway quickly stopped in front of me. Shen Zhao, is that you in there? It's Zhang Xian. I uncovered the fishy-smelling detritus that was in the way, just in time to meet the handsome face in front of me. Zhang Xian was gasping for air and carrying a large bag of things in his hand, looking like he had just returned from outside. No wonder Zhang Xian clearly lived on the top floor, but the footsteps just now came from downstairs. I'm sorry, Shen Zhao. I just had a late-night snack outside. I'm not late, am I? Before Zhang Xian could finish his words, I suddenly felt a hint of something wrong. Soon I remembered what was wrong. What the pop-up said before was that the male lead was sleeping at home at the time of the murder, even though he lived in the same building as me. Zhang Xian, however, is back from the outside. A chill ran from the soles of his feet straight to his head. Da, ta-da, da. Suddenly, a regular but extremely slow footsteps came from behind Zhang Xian. I looked up with trembling eyes, and the man had already stopped behind Zhang Xian. He still wore his black mask and black hat, and the chainsaw in his hand glinted coldly in the dim light. Without the slightest hesitation, he violently raised his murder weapon and slashed towards Zhang Xian. Zhang Xian didn't even have time to react before he fell into a pool of blood. The murderer slowly turned his head to look at me. In the next second, I only felt a sharp pain hit me, and the world in front of me gradually became blurry. Those pop-ups are back. The heroine isn't the first victim anymore? Who is this little brother, good-looking and handsome, how just appeared so a moment on the box meal? What a pity. Upstairs nonsense. That's because the male protagonist did not appear okay. The male protagonist is the most handsome in this article. However, didn't the female lead already ask the male lead for help? How come she still died? When I woke up again, I was back in front of my house, and my hand was still about to open the door. Don't open the door! That's not a delivery boy. He's a murderer! He called you in order to confirm whether you are a woman living alone by the voice on the phone. I'm really convinced that the protagonist of every thriller text is so brainless, and this delivery guy obviously has a problem with answering the door. This time, I calmly skimmed over the pop-ups that were exactly the same as in my last life, and sent a distress message to Wang Zhanghe while following the old path and crawling outside the bathroom window to the hallway. He returned the message as quickly as he did in his last life. Shen Zhao, listen to me. Before he finds out, you run into the elevator right now. Press all the buttons for all floors below the 10th floor, and then go down on the 5th floor. Resident 502 on the 5th floor is a retired armed police officer. If you knock on the door and tell him the reason, he won't refuse to take you in. I froze slightly when I read his message. I finally realized why this person would be the hero of this world. And the pop-ups were all starting to bubble pink at the moment. Holy shit, am I reading this right? The heroine is directly asking the hero for help. The guy, the male lead, is excited to death, isn't he? This is the first time the goddess has taken the initiative to talk to him. A mount. Is the mystery going to turn into a romance? Breathless, not reading anymore. After I timed my climb out of the building, The murderer on the other side of the room just happened to chainsaw open the door to my house. I rushed into the elevator as fast as I could and pressed all the floor buttons below the 10th floor, just like the hero said. It's time to say no. This male lead is really smart. There are 2 pairs of elevators in a building. And when I got into the elevator, the murderer, realizing that no one was at home, would surely come out after me, and would also surely be able to determine my location by the monitors outside the elevator. I live on the 10th floor, and when I get into the elevator, I press all the way up to the 10th floor, and finally exit on the 5th floor. Even if the murderer was observing from above, he could only see the elevator stopping between the 1st and 9th floors respectively, and couldn't tell exactly which floor I was down. And the 5th floor is just equal distance to the 10th floor and the 1st floor. No matter the murderer starts to line up from the 9th floor or the 1st floor, it will take a certain amount of time to line up to the location of the 5th floor. What's even more amazing is that it only took the male lead 2 seconds to come up with this solution. To return my message, I tried to remember what this male lead looked like again, and realized that the first thing that popped into my head was still the way he looked when he was a kid pulling my braids in the neighborhood. With a dirty face and snot bubbles, he couldn't relate to the handsome, highly intelligent teenager described in the pop-ups. I quickly got off the elevator and went to the 5th floor, where I found resident 502. Perhaps my nerves were too quickly strained, and I looked around warily as I knocked on the door, not daring to knock too loudly. Still, the door was quickly opened, and a stoic-faced, retired armed police officer appeared before me. I marveled at the fact that retired armed police pairs could still have such a strong sensitivity to sound, while rushing to explain the situation to him. The old armed police officer immediately let me in, and closed the door vigilantly. Wang Zhanghe told me that he had called the police and was now on his way to 502. I actually thought about calling the police the first 2 times, but I was so pressed for time that I wasn't given a chance. Plus, yes, I've realized that this world is a fictional world, or a fictional world centered around a male protagonist, and alarms haven't been as useful as rubbing off on the male protagonist's aura. But with this police report being filed by the male lead, it's a different story. Just as I was finally about to breathe a sigh of relief, I suddenly heard 2 soft knocks on the front door. "Hello, takeout." I was shocked and jerked my head up, just wanting to stop it. But I suddenly realized that the old armed policeman had already stood in the doorway at some point, and his hand was resting on the doorknob. The old armed police officer opened the door while mumbling, "Why don't I remember ordering takeout?" I was so anxious that I blurted out, "Don't open the door!" But it's still too late. The moment the door was opened, the murderer rushed in with his chainsaw raised. Although the armed police reacted quickly and fought with the murderer, they were ultimately at a gradual disadvantage because of their age. I looked around in horror for something to defend myself with, but found nothing. Soon the armed police officer fell into a pool of blood. The murderer turned his head to me and I closed my eyes in despair. The next second, severe pain hit me, and my consciousness faded. The pop-ups started coming in again in sheets like snowflakes. Ooh, the heroine dies, and the hero arrives just in time to see the heroine's body. This is so sadistic. The first half of the book was so stifling. It's finally time for the part where the hero kills back. The heroine is so pitiful. She has tried so hard to live and she still ends up dying. After being reborn again, I still contacted Wang Jianghe at the first opportunity. But this time, I explicitly asked him if I could just hide in his house and then call the police to wait for help. I've basically gotten my head around it from the first few failures. In this world, except for the male lead, anyone who gets involved in this matter will surely die, and everyone in this world will be forced to drop their intelligence in order to make the plot work. Like that old armed police officer from the last life. Obviously, when he opened the door to let me in, his expression and movements were cautious as hell. Why again would you open the door to someone outside so easily, when you know you haven't ordered takeout? That's ridiculous. So this time I chose to directly bind myself to the male lead. And since I want to rub the male lead aura, I'll just rub it to the end. Wang Zhonghe first suggested that I get off the elevator at the 5th floor, and hide in the house of the old armed police officer at 502, and that he would soon come to the 5th floor to look for me. Because Wang Zhanghe lived on the 11th floor, it was too close to the 10th floor, so it must be much more dangerous than going to the 5th floor. I told him decisively that whether I ended up going to the 5th floor or the 1st floor, I was now tied to him the whole time anyway, and I would go wherever he went. Maybe it's because I've been through a few rounds of life and death, and I've been talking a lot more anxiously, and when I said that, the opposite side of the room was silent for a while, before returning an okay. But then the pop-up exploded. Shit, this heroine at this time is not, and the hero is not familiar with it. How to speak so bluntly, ha 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 ha. The male lead is blushing behind the screen, I think, and kind of well stoned. Why do I feel like the female lead is like having God's perspective, as if she knows in advance that the male lead can save her? That's why she's suddenly like this. The male lead is forced to enter the game early, ha 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 ha. So will this female lead still die? I don't know, watch. Perhaps it was the pop-ups that were so stoned that I held a glimmer of anticipation in my heart as I stood in front of the hero's house. I'd also like to see what someone who could be the hero of an entire book looks like. But the moment the door opened, I froze completely in place. Still confirmed. Are you Wang Zhangye? The man glanced around warily before quickly pulling me back into the room. Come in first and talk. I still didn't look back for a long time until the door was closed behind me.